Good morning. I'm Scott Willison, owner of the Confluence Fly Shop in Bellingham, Washington. Today I'm going to share one of my favorite local river fall coho salmon flies that we call the pumpkin spice latte, largely based on its color scheme. The pumpkin spice latte, of course, is kind of an iconic fall drink in the Northwest, for better or for worse. This is a type of coho fly that I often tie. They're fairly simple. I can change the color scheme, almost limitless color combinations and possibilities, and they're cheap and easy to tie. So it's not heartbreaking when you lose them in the woody debris or the snaggy places where you're often finding coho milling around. Tying this fly on a size 6 Daiichi 1720, any 3 or 4x long hook in size 6 or 8 will work very well for this fly. I often tie these on Tiemco 5263s, Gamakatsu S11 4L 2Hs, and so forth. On this hook, I've got a 5/32 inch orange, fluorescent orange brass bead. You could also use a tungsten bead if you wanted a little bit more weight. So I'm going to start out by just covering my shank thoroughly with 140 Denier white ultra thread. Wrap back to about the hook point, and then clip the thread. We're going to add a nice little tail of white Marabou. This is how I often like to do my tails. Cut off the tip of the feather here. Then I'm going to cut the stemmy part out of that, because I want as much movement as I can get out of this thing. I want my tail to be roughly the length of the hook shank. So I'm going to measure that up against the hook shank there. And then we'll start it up at the head of the fly toward the bead and wrap back over it. This is going to ensure that we've got a nice even underbody throughout the fly. We'll go ahead and trim that extra Marabou off. Next, I'm going to add some highlights of, this is UV orange Predator wrap, really cool barred material. And I don't need a lot of it. I'm going to cut off, just pull out 2 strands here. And we'll kind of tie that down in the middle and then fold it back over the fly. And I kind of want 2 strands on either side of the fly. Just gives it a little bit of a nice barred effect there. I'll trim that off. And then for my flash, getting down to the last of it here, but I've got some opalescent lateral scale. And I just want 1 strand down each side of the hook. So I'm just going to cut one kind of longish strand here. And I'll lay it down the near side of the tail. I'll fold the other side and wrap it around there. Trim that up. And before I carry on, I like to take a couple of wraps at the base of the tail underneath it. That helps hold that tail up and prevents it from fouling around the hook shank. Next, I've got a little bit of UV copper polar chenille. This copper one is one I include in a lot of my coho flies. Sometimes I'll do a blue tail or a chartreuse tail, but they really seem to go nuts for this copper. So we'll tie that in around the base of the tail. I'll wrap up to the bead, and then I'm going to do a bunch of thread wraps right behind that bead just to kind of create a barrier so that bead's not sliding back. There's nothing worse than going to tie on a fly and you apply pressure to that bead and it pushes all your material down the hook shank, and you're kind of ruined before you get started. Alright, so got a pretty good blockade there. That bead's not going anywhere. And then before I start winding this on, I'm going to twist the material. Tends to shorten it up a little bit, make it a little bit more sparse. And we'll just do close wraps the length of the fly. I don't mind at all if I've got some scraggly material kind of hanging out there. This thing's just nice and buggy. And I'm kind of twisting and then wrapping. I'm going to pull that up nice and tight to the bead. Keep that pressure on so it doesn't unravel. And then we'll take 2 or 3 wraps over the top of the polar chenille, and then we're going to reposition that thread in front of it. Moving your thread in front is a really good trick that's going to help you to prevent cutting the thread when you trim that extra material there. And then we'll make sure got a nice little head built up there. And a real easy way to finish these flies so you're not getting a bunch of head cement or glue or whatnot in the material itself is just to take a little bit of your brush on Zap-A-Gap. Just lightly brush the thread. Take a few wraps. And then we will go ahead and whip finish this fly. Now white is often an overlooked color for coho, but white is just one of those sleeper colors for everything. And when conventional flies like the drab olive or chartreuse flies, I often fish up in the Coho sloughs off the Fraser and the Vedder and rivers up north. When nothing else is working, I often go to white, and it serves me well. Kind of makes me wonder why I don't just start out with it. But then the last thing we're going to do is kind of trim this fly up. I want these fibers a little shorter overall, so what I like to do is just kind of gather them all up at the top of the hook. And then I'm going to trim it at an angle. So angle your scissors up. So I want shorter fibers in the back, slightly longer fibers up front, and it gives it a nice kind of little taper to it. Get the bottom a little better there. And there you have it, the pumpkin spice latte. Great coho fly for northwestern Washington. Thanks for watching.